Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the VoV podcast, Voices of Vic. We got Arnav Nambiar. What's going on, man?
Okay, so dude, so I'm hella ADHD. We're kind of going into an age where water is becoming more and more scarce. A lot of wars, when you kind of start to look at it, it's all fought for resources. A lot of psychologists and scientists believe that the reason why ADHD cases are going up so much is because parents are raising their kids more narcissistically. I've lived in a bunch of different countries like Tanzania, Egypt, India, Kenya, Ghana. My parents live in Thailand now, and Canada. Honestly, I feel like I'm an advertisement. This is why you should give your kid Adderall. Did you know that women are more likely to date people in their own race? Tell me about how Gretchen cheated on her boyfriend. Really? Wow, that's fucking, yeah. So Matt Rife was getting canceled for being out of pocket. And he was like, guys, I need to post an apology. And he sent a link. And it was just it was a link to special needs helmets. I've partied in London. I've partied here. I've partied in Africa. People who date within their friend groups, the relationship never tends to work out.
Good? Yeah, no worries. No rush. Got an hour here.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the VoV podcast, Voices of Vic. Today I'm here with a special guest. We got Arnav Nambiar. What's going on, man?
What's sorry?
What's going on?
Oh, bro, so much is going on, dog. Okay, whoever's watching this, how f***ed are you for midterms right now and finals?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good question to ask. I mean, finals is coming up.
Yeah, bro. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know when this thing's going to get posted, but hopefully, maybe if it's, posted after exams, everyone's through the storm, everyone's good. What do you like better? Projects, final assignments or final tests?
Okay, so dude, so I'm hella ADHD.
Okay.
So for me, it's I always find a way, if let's say there's a project, I'll find I'll procrastinate it and I won't do as well as I would have liked to.
Right.
And if it's a test, I'll wait till the last minute to get studying.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. For me, it's honestly, I just for me, it's I don't really care what it is as long as I'm interested in the class,
Right.
Yeah.
So you're a third year math and stats student.
Yeah, against all odds.
Against all odds.
Somehow, yeah.
What do you identify more with, math or stats? They're kind of the same thing.
Actually, okay, I love having this discussion.
That's not true?
It is, but it's also not. So it's again, math and stats are it's kind of let's say there was a tree.
Yep.
Math is the husk, the bulk of the tree, but stats is a branch.
For sure.
So what I identify more with stats because for me I was really before I came to UofT I was encapsulated by this idea of truth.
Yep.
And I found that I felt math preserved that idea. The proofs we have are they're correct. If we agree that they're there.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. But the issue I had was I felt I couldn't talk to people because let's say I'm doing a third year math and stats course. Unless you're a third year math and stats, you're not gonna be able to understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
And it's that's the same for you. You're in econ, right?
Yep.
I don't know third year econ.
Fair.
I don't know about game theory and what the fuck. Yeah, anyway, so it's so it's for me, I kind of fell in love with stats when I was people might not know how to solve the problems, but if I'm this is the mean of this, you have an intuitive understanding of what it means. And I don't know, I just love the human element of it. That I don't know, whenever I talk about math, I can tell people okay, they won't understand, so they're interested. But I bet you oh, did you know this statistic exists for this group? People are wait, really? How do you know that? And it's I don't know, I just love the dialogue of it.
You can absolutely link some of these interests math because me 100% too. Growing up, elementary school, high school, it only was until I got to UofT I realized that math might not be for me. But that entire way up until that point, I was a huge math kid. I loved it.
Yeah.
Numbers and all that interests me so much to the point where there's a very famous Halloween I had where I calculated, this isn't really stats, but it's more just explaining what kind of math I was, what kind of mathematical kid I was, right? And one Halloween, I calculated the price of my Halloween costume, right? How much it cost. I don't know how old I was. I must have been 9 years old. I added up all the costs for all the different pieces of my costume, found the total. It was $30 or something.
Yeah.
And then I took the total of all the candy I had gotten from that night, divided it by the total price of a box of candy, and I saw how much profit I had made from Halloween.
Wait, how old were you when you did that?
I was 9.
Bro, it's you're the person that's oh yeah, ever since I've been 7, I've been thinking about opportunity cost.
Yeah.
You're the person that's oh, in 2008, bro, I should have been buying property.
Yeah, 100%. That's true.
No, but honestly, it's something I've noticed in myself where it's whenever people like studying what they're doing and they're passionate about it, like there's always like an interest that's like existed. Like with you, like you said you're in econ, like what you're doing is like that's such a like direct application of like econ, and like it works into like opportunity cost, like revenue management,
all of that.
And yeah, and like for me it's just like, I don't know, I've always been captivated by this idea of like truth, like what is real. Like, so you know how like right now we're living in the age of information,
right?
Like we've never had like more information accessible, but like honestly, when it comes to issues, like I don't think I've ever been more confused.
That is completely true,
dude. Yeah,
it is completely true.
Yeah, it's like there's just like there's so much information. It's like my family's like moved around a lot, and like recently like now they're living in like Thailand, and like I remember like I was going through this like food court in Thailand, and there were so many like options, like more than I've ever seen in my life, that I was like paralyzed. I didn't know what I want, and that's kind of how I feel like with information nowadays. There's so much of it that like I don't really know what to like trust. Like what do I like quote, and like I don't know, like when I was a kid, I used to have this thing of, oh, I always want to be right about everything. I need to be like 100% correct. But like, I feel like that thing has kind of changed, where it's not like where like, as a kid, I was more like, whatever I speak has to be right. But now as an adult, I'm like, whatever I think has to be right. Like, I feel like people, like when it comes to like their egos, a lot of the times they get like too like in their own head, like, oh, like how do people perceive me? How does this? And like, it kind of comes in the way of them like living their best life, you know? Yeah,
it's true. I said this on a different podcast. I was talking about politics, and I had said that when I was in high school, I talked way more about politics than I do now. And I think that's because as I grow older, like normally you think as you age, you talk about politics more, right? Like high school kids, elementary school kids aren't really supposed to be talking about politics. But as I age, I realize more how much of a complete mess and how confusing all of it is. We'll make sure that's not in there. I've realized how much of a complete mess it all is, and how like what is true. Like how can I don't want to talk about these certain things because I'm going to sound like an idiot. Like I don't know. Like, I mean, the obvious example right now is what's going on in Israel and Palestine. People who are so loud and certain of their opinions, they're not even there. They don't even know where that information is coming from. You know what I mean?
Feel like, I don't know, with my thing is like, it's like there's this manga or like anime called Attack on Titan. And like the whole thing is like people compare it to like Art of War, because it kind of shows that like with every conflict and war, like it's not like this guy's bad, this other person's bad. Like it's such a complex issue that stems from like multiple different issues, and like people being greedy, people being selfish, people also like doing what they think is the best. And like for me, it's like, I don't know, like the issue I think about, like I'm Indian, and like there's the Kashmir conflict. And it's like there's like so many different sides towards it. Like whereas like I as an Indian, like I should be technically like on like Team India, and like I guess I kind of am, but like also like the Kashmiri people, the ones that live there, they don't want either of them there. Like neither the Indians or the Pakistani. Like I guess from what I've heard, I could be wrong, is like they kind of favor the Pakistani people.
Like what's the issue? Like just briefly kind of to explain.
It's basically like there's this mountain. It's called Kashmir. And like something, India said they'd give it to Pakistan, something, they said they'd give it back, something. And now there's like three groups fighting for it, like the Indians, the Pakistanis, and like the native like Kashmiri people. And it's like the Indians want to control it for their own reason, the Pakistanis want to control it for their own reason, the Kashmiri people, from what I've heard, I could be wrong, like I think they mostly want independence, but between India and Pakistan, like I think they'd rather choose like Pakistan. And it's like, I don't know, like how the Indian like government like portrays it as like, oh, we're fighting because like this is a religious area. But it's also like the big reason is like Kashmir has like water, and like we're kind of going into an age where like water is becoming more and more scarce. And like a lot of wars, when you kind of start to look at it, like it's all fought for resources. And like, I don't know, it's like war is so much more complex, and like when you kind of start to see the bigger pictures of it, like again, like there are instances like the Holocaust where like people are very clearly wrong in that situation. But like you kind of have to see the bigger picture of like how did things get to this point, what caused it, and
I agree. The world is rarely black and white. I always used to say that there's no good guys and bad guys in war, but with World War II, like I feel like Germany was a very obvious bad guy. But even then, like people don't kind of go back and see what led Germany to get to this insane state.
Like literally, exactly. It's like, I feel like what people could learn more is like, why do people make bad decisions? Because like I make bad decisions like almost, honestly all the time. And it's like, I don't know, it's like, so like, you know what, like humans, like, you know how humans are naturally like irrational? So you know like starvation is completely avoidable. Like we have enough food to like feed every single person, but like we just cannot figure out like an effective way to like give these resources. In a lot of situations we don't want to. And like, I don't know, like that's one of the things that makes me like very optimistic in a way. Because like I know I'm irrational,
Yeah.
and because I know there's some issues I can't solve. But since there are people who are smarter than me, it makes me like hopeful that, oh, I can't do this, but they're smarter than me, so they can do this.
100%.
And it's also like with AI too, like if you've done like stats and probability courses, right?
Of course. I'm in a stats minor actually.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah,
Oh wait, are you doing 302?
302, yeah.
Dude, I'm doing 302 right now.
Ass.
Oh my god.
Terrible.
It's like it's an interesting course.
Yeah.
But I'm doing so ass in it.
No, me too.
Wait, are
Me
you in
too.
the 6 to 9 section?
No.
Oh, fuck.
No, I'm in 3 to 5.
Oh yeah, but it's like like with enough people, like everything like normally distributes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that's like CLT, and that's like kind of like the biggest thing in stats. But it's like when people talk about AI, they always look at the no, what if everything that could possibly go wrong like went wrong? But what they ignore is like that probability is just as likely as the what if our lives are amazing? What if we live in this utopia?
It's true.
And like that's rational. I mean, it's like a human negativity bias.
Yeah.
But it's also like I don't know. I feel like people could be more optimistic nowadays.
It's completely true. Yeah. I mean, I feel like in that scenario, the consequences of the negative side are a lot more amplified than the positive consequences of the good side.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like people are more scared by losing than they are happy to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that scenario, at least. But no, you're right. When it comes to like understanding the motivations and reasons behind why certain things happen, I think that that's beneficial when you're trying to solve kind of like a group problem or a problem at a larger population level, like a war. When it comes to an individual, though, I think that might be able to be avoided. Like on an individual level, let's take this for example. Let's say that there's huge crime rates in the city. For example, I don't know exactly what they are, but let's say in Toronto there's like a skyrocket and there's huge crime rates.
Yeah.
I think that as a mayor and as, let's say, a government official, it's more important to understand the reasons behind the crime rate in your city. And let's say as a family member, for example, let's say your brother is committing crime. I don't think the motivations in that sense are nearly as important as they are on the grand scale, because I think with an individual, you can kind of talk them into just like moving them out of this negative situation, and you can. Maybe I'm sounding like an idiot now that I'm saying this.
I get what you're trying to say. It's like, it's kind of like, I feel like when you're on like a one-on-one situation, like it's kind of easier to communicate and like, it's just easier to be vulnerable and just like more like honest in a sense.
Yeah.
If you're in a group, like you gotta kind of create that like group persona.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, so like with me, like as I said, I have like ADHD. But, like something I like genuinely wonder, and like I don't have like a definitive thing is like, do I have autism?
Right.
And it's like I have friends who have autism,
right.
and like I can interact well with them, but I also have friends who don't have autism. And like I'm kind of existing in this level of like 50-50, like yeah, maybe I have it because of this. Maybe I don't have it because of like this.
Got it.
And like kind of the thing I say is like how like I'm like why like my conclusion is I don't think I have it is like on a one-on-one level, like I can tell like emotions and I can do that. But like on a group level, I'm not gonna cap. Like sometimes my like head goes too fast. I don't know what's going on.
That's fair.
Like I'm not gonna front.
That's completely fair. No, it's true though. Like my whole thing is like delusional optimism, or just like kind of, I'm trying to avoid this victim mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So like, I mean, with ADHD, that's a perfect example. When you're trying to solve the problem of ADHD on a grand scale, I don't think it's helpful to say ADHD is not a real issue and just ignore it. I think that you probably need a little bit more scientific reasons to help the grand problem, but on a one-on-one front, when it's just me and you talking, let's say I'm related to you, I'm your family member, I'm trying to help you with your ADHD. I think that there is something to be said about me just telling you it's fine. Like it's not that big a deal. You got it. Just live with it. Like, I think that's an easier way to communicate one-on-one, but you can't do that with a group.
Yeah, 100%. It's okay. So I have an interesting statistic about ADHD.
Okay.
So you know how ADHD rates are like skyrocketing recently? Like you talked about this with Justin too.
I did, yeah.
But it's also, like a lot of psychologists and scientists believe that the reason why ADHD cases are going up so much is because parents are raising their kids more narcissistically. It's like I'm an only child. And like my parents like always raised me to be like, you're the best, you're so smart, you're so good at all of these things.
Yep.
And a lot of my perspective of the world and how I see myself, like before uni was like, oh, I'm this great person who's like so smart, like so good at all these things.
Yeah.
But like after I came to uni, I had this like humbling moment where I'm like, yo, like, I'm probably smarter than like, the average person, but like compared to some of these like fucking people, like, nah.
Yeah.
Like, no fucking shot. Like, holy, like, bro, like that's something I love about UofT. And like, I kind of decided as like a resolution for myself, like, I don't want to like shit on UofT.
Yeah.
Like I feel so many people do it, and it's like I get it, like it's hard, but like there was this like when I was first year, like there was this like third year, and like I met him on like my first or second week of school, and like he just complained about UofT. He was like, "Oh, I hate it. I regret coming here. I this that,"
Yeah.
and like I don't know. I made a life decision that it's like no matter like how shit my life is, like even if I'm like fucking broke, like everything goes to shit, like I don't want to live a life where I'm like, this sucks, this is bad.
Completely.
I want to kind of like find like the good in my life and like be grateful for it. And like I have so much to be grateful for.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we were talking about this before because at the start of the podcast, we made a few clips about kind of like the downsides of UofT, the negative like sides of UofT, because that's what a lot of people talk about. Like people can relate with that sort of thing. You see a bunch of accounts, the UofTers account.
Yeah, no, that's funny as fuck, dog.
Yeah, yeah.
So funny.
No, I know, but people will go on there, right? And it's like a lot of the time it's negative stuff about the school because it's relatable. A lot of people think the same thing, but there also comes a point where I realized that I was posting clips about UofT that were negative, whether it's like people aren't social, it's hard to make friends, all this type of stuff. And I was like, even though this is relatable, this doesn't make people feel good.
I completely agree.
I think that even though something might be relatable, if it's negative, I don't think it helps.
I think like I agree with that, but like I feel like for me like help is like how do you give people the best picture? And like I guess my main takeaway as a third year in like math and stats is like, okay, I'm looking right into the camera for this one.
Sure.
But it's like people, please, I'm fucking begging, talk to your teachers. Like I'm gonna be straight up, like I'm not good at school. Like I'm pretty ass. But it's like I had this like one like older teacher named like Sonia Marks, and like she's a PhD candidate, and like so like I want to go into like data science and data analytics, and she has experience in that, and like she's mentoring me, and like I wasn't great in her class, like, but like the reason why is like I came up to her and like I showed her that I had like a general interest, and like I feel like the main issue of UofT is like people complain about being social, but like I feel like when you're social, you always get rewarded for it. Like if like I DM'd you like, hey, like I like your podcast, like I think I'd be an interesting guest, and like here I am, like you DM me back because you're like, you know, fuck it. Like I don't know, being social has its reward, and it's like I feel like if people like made an effort to be more outgoing, like it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. You don't even know what could happen just by saying hello to one more person. You know what I mean?
100%, dude.
And it also comes to playing to your strengths. I noticed that I've met a lot of people through this podcast. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't consider myself an extroverted person per se, but I'm not antisocial. I think that's what a lot of people confuse, is that even though you're an introverted person does not necessarily mean you're antisocial.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that introverts kind of get tagged with this sort of label that they are antisocial, but you can be a social introvert.
And also, in a way, I feel like it kind of feeds into itself. Like, since introverts are like thought as antisocial, people who have those tendencies are like, oh, I guess I have to be antisocial now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just kind of feeds off itself.
It's a loop.
I don't know. For me, it's like I've lived in like a bunch of different countries, like Tanzania, Egypt, India, Kenya, Ghana. My parents live in Thailand now, and like Canada. And like I feel like my perspective is so different because like most people live in one place their whole life. Yeah. And like I was talking to my roommate, like my best friend, and he's like, "Oh, I'm really sad. I'm about to like sell my childhood home." And I'm like, "Wait, what does that feel like?"
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is
What's
a childhood home?
home?
What is a childhood home?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it's like, but like for me, like I feel that was beneficial because like I had this like ultimatum. It was like every 3-4 years, like you move to a new place. If you don't talk to people, you will be left alone. And like no matter like how cringe or like dumb the shit I would say in high school, and like I said cringe dumb shit in high school.
Who didn't?
No, dude. I was like, honestly, like I feel like I'm like an advertisement. Like this is why you should give your kid Adderall. like
That's funny.
Meth solves their problems. And like I don't know. It's like I like kind of get in this place where like when I talk to my friends, and like I have this one friend, like he's 6'7", he's really good looking.
Nice.
But he's deathly afraid of talking to women.
Okay.
Like to the point where like he gets
6'7".
No. Like he's afraid. Like we've had big talks like this, and like I've kind of realized like the reason why like I have like dude I have insecurities like off like the wall, but it's like the reason why I'm able to like not necessarily be afraid to like do this and meet with new people is like I've just been so conditioned of you don't talk to these people, you don't let them know who you are, like that's it, like you lost your chance, like yeah, and it's like I don't know, I feel like I don't know. I don't even know where I was going with that.
It's true. No, it's completely true. It's like I think that step one is actually developing your social skills because it is scary to go up to somebody knowing you're going to flop. You know what I mean? Like not necessarily 100% guaranteed fact, but like if your heart's racing trying to go up to somebody, you probably need a bit more prep. But the prep comes with with talking to people.
Yeah, experience. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Experience. So as soon as you do it that first time, it's going to suck. It
Yes.
might not work out the way you want to, but the second time it gets 1% easier.
Yeah, 100%.
You just
It's like
have
going
to
the
build
gym,
it
though.
up. Sorry?
It's like going to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Like the first day you go, I mean, like I was like working out pretty consistently over the summer, but like I've kind of like calmed down with it. But it's like your first week, it fucking sucks. Your muscles are sore, everything sucks. But like the more you keep doing it, just like it feels like good.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like I don't know. It's like for me, it's like why like I do this thing on Instagram. I genuinely wonder like how many people are gonna like be in this thing because they're like, oh, that's the poll guy.
Yeah.
That guy asks questions on Instagram. And like it's like. I kind of like, I ask these questions and like why I do it is going back to this idea of truth where like I'll ask questions and like I like to see how people like vote on it so I can be like, what do people think?
Yeah.
And like people always like, oh, well, people vote the way that you think they want you to vote. So you're not actually getting an honest answer to the question.
Right.
But then I phrase it as, but like, couldn't I just rephrase it as, what does society think about this? How do people who don't really know me, how do they feel like they should vote based on the impressions I've given them? And I don't know, I just think it's, so like there's this thing in math. It's called Gödel's incompleteness paradox.
Okay.
And it's a hole in math. It's basically like a flaw that's like in math that like we've kind of realized like no matter what we do, we'll never be able to truly get over it. And like that makes sense because like humans are irrational. Like there's always going to be issues that like we have that'll just like continue to like perpetrate.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, with this like stats and like this stuff, like I feel like maybe people might lie, maybe it might not be true, but it's like I feel like I'm getting a measure of like something. It's like data, and like honestly, like I love it. I love doing it. Like this is like how I got like Sonia Marks to like be my like mentor. Like I literally told her like this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm interested in, and like she was like this is like really cool. And like like with your polls, like dog, like I am so down. Just like send me the data, like I'll fucking analyze it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go into it now then. We can
Dude,
talk about
yes.
it. So I
You have
got
Excel?
not Excel. I don't have Excel for the polls, but I just got screenshots. I'll actually send you the data though if you're interested.
Yeah.
I took pictures. Let's see what we got here. So there's 13 polls I want to go over with you.
How many voters do you have?
So they ranged, I didn't know exactly. They ranged from about 40 to 130.
How many followers do you have on your thing?
1,050.
Ooh, that's like okay. So so the main thing when you're doing all these polls is there's this thing, it's like called your confidence interval and your margin of error.
Okay.
And like you can like I did a calculation for my polls where like I have a 95% confidence interval and like a 10% margin of error.
Okay.
Something like that. And it's like you can base like your polls off of like that. So that's how you can tell how accurate they are.
Got it. Okay.
Let's go with a smaller one first.
Start with a smaller one?
Yeah, because that's just easier for me to like read through it.
So I have the percentages. I can go. Do you want the percentages and the actual like tallies?
Okay. Tell me the question first, and so I'll actually work through like my process of how I would do it. So tell me the question.
100%.
Yeah.
So before we start, I did have one thing, which is once again an interesting kind of statistical thing to think about, because you say you're looking for truth. You want to know what's the truth. When you say truth, you mean the truth of what? The truth of the world?
Everything, anything. Just like why do things like work the way they do? Why do we do things like I don't know. There's this like question I have. Like I don't know. I can't fully word it, but like. I feel like there's a question mark when it comes to like human beings, and I feel like this is like a problem with like philosophy, math, psych, econ, like everything. And it's like I don't know what the question is, but I know it exists, and like I don't know, like I've never honestly thought about this until you brought this up. Like that's a good question, but it's like I feel like there's a question, and like my idea of truth, like I think my life will be complete when I figure out what that question is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So once again, I thought of it because you're talking about like confidence intervals, the margin of error, all this type of stuff, and that's a very mathematical approach for me, because once again, I'm aware of this stuff. I think people in stats and in psychology, I see a lot of it actually, because in my psychology course, they talk a lot about stats.
What psych course are you doing?
I'm doing Psych 230, which is personality psych.
Oh.
But they do talk a lot about stats, and I don't like the way that they kind of, a lot of the time the error and all that kind of stuff is neglected. You know, it's like this is taken as fact, and it's like they forget to mention that there's room for debate.
Oh my, the margin of error. Like, it's like, bro. Like honestly, I think margin of error in your confidence interval is more important than the stat itself.
Right.
Because it's like how much can you like trust it, and it's like again like it's kind of like, have you heard of like the air resistance like analogy to it? No. Where it's like we're an undergrad. Like we like know more about this field than like most of the world, but we're not at a level yet where like this information like matters.
Yeah.
It's like if let's say you're doing physics, like there's a saying where it's like, oh, like we're gonna just ignore air resistance. Air resistance, that doesn't exist. And like that's kind of how I think about it with stats in this, where it's like these things, like the error we have in this, it's so complex to understand how to solve it and what the implications could mean.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know. It's like, it's one of those things where like, it's like, you know, in econ, everything's based on assumptions.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. We just assume that
It's
doesn't
true.
exist, dog.
It's
Yeah.
true. And that's actually dangerous. And the reason that I look, like when I look at these numbers, I'll tell you like my process of how I look at these percentages I'm about to tell you. I do not see this as university students believe 60% this way, 40% that way. All like I make sure that the question in my head is phrased so perfectly where error is practically impossible. So the first question is, why did you go to uni? And is it to learn or is it for the degree? And
that's an incredible question.
it's a good question.
How many voters did you have?
For that one, let me see. Let me pull it up. I have the percentages, but I didn't get the exact tallies. So I'll find it for you right now. But I was saying that I phrase the question in my mind so that I say 62, let's just say 62% of
the sample space.
Yes, 62% of 62% of Voices of Vic followers who voted on this poll and who were active on Instagram at this day, who felt like they wanted to vote on that poll for that day. Like, you need this long sentence to be able to actually take any important conclusion from it. So let me get the number of voters here. It was a clip. I posted a reel about, is university overrated? Added a poll saying, why did you go to uni? Option 1, to learn. Option 2, degree, baby. 62% say degree. Okay. 38% say to learn. And the total number of voters on this one was 34.
Okay. Okay. So bad news. CLT doesn't apply.
What would CLT is
Central
40?
limit theorem. It depends on how many people you're sampling.
Right.
So like for like an amount of 1,000, again, like I could be wrong about this, but I think you need 80 to 120.
Okay.
Something around that.
Got it.
And again, maybe I could be completely wrong, but okay. So asking that question. So So here's how I would break it down. First, like I'd upload all the names on an Excel sheet. Then the next thing I do is let's think about what are inherent things that people have. That like everybody to an extent has. And like the first is like race. Yeah. So it's like, how do white people vote? How do black people vote? How do Indian people vote? Yeah. The other one, and like honestly, I try to avoid using this because it's like gender. Because like, I don't know, like the current narrative of gender is like, it's not just about man and like woman. Like there's a lot of in between. There's a lot of like, there's transitioning and all that stuff. And like, I just feel like currently I don't necessarily know how, like I don't have the background research to tackle that question, if I'm being honest.
Interesting.
And like me and Sonia Marks, we talked about this where she like gave me some articles. She told me about how to think about it. Cause it's like, I know like there's like kind of this whole thing about like, oh, like there's one side that's like, we're very for this idea. And there's one side that's like very anti this idea. If let's say like people are man, woman, non-binary, whatever they are, whatever category like they choose to fit themselves in, I kind of like, I'll create a percentage. What percentage of people do this? Yeah. Next, I look at race, ethnicity. Like what's really interesting is a lot of the times like brown and white people, like they vote differently. Like it's like culturally, like I think like I did this one poll where it's like, do you consider yourself a normal person? And like what I found was like white people on average tended to consider themselves more normal, but brown people were like, they did not. And like when I found was like women are more centered towards like it's more like 50-50 with women, where it kind of centers more, but like with men, it's more like it's very extreme, if that makes sense.
I see.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I'm curious as to why do you think that race is easier to kind of categorize than gender? Because race, like you could actually have like race as a very interesting spectrum. You know what I mean? Like you can mix white and black. You can mix Hispanic, like all of these things. I feel like that is more of a spectrum than gender, because the gender argument, like some people think it's a spectrum, some people don't. Whereas race is a actual spectrum.
Honestly, what it comes down to more is like, it's kind of out of fear. Yeah. But like, I feel like I can make claims about race and use data to support it. Like, I feel like when I make claims about gender, like, I don't know why, like, I haven't ever made claims about gender, but I just feel like people will be more like aggressive and be like, you suck, kill yourself. Okay. Like, you're like, you should just die. I'm like, dude, I don't want to deal with that.
Fair.
But it's like, also like, that is a very interesting point. And like, what I like to do is like, I like to group cultures together. like I feel like in Asian culture, there's a very big emphasis on working hard and doing this. Whereas like on white culture, and I could be wrong, it's more about like live a life that you're good with. That's like good enough. Like you make like 60K a year, shit, that's chill. That's great. Like good job, bro. And like, I don't know, like for me, it's like, I kind of like grouping in like cultures where it's like, I'd say like Indian and Chinese culture, pretty similar, but I'd say Chinese and American, like very, like quite different.
Yeah.
Like on an average sense, like obviously they're
got it.
Yeah.
And I think that's also another interesting argument is that I feel like the more and more we get, I feel like we're in a very progressive stage of history right now where your race is no longer dictated, can no longer predict culture. Sometimes
Ooh,
yes.
Yeah.
But like you can have a brown guy and an Asian guy born and raised in Canada.
Yeah.
And culturally he's completely Canadian.
Yeah, like that's like for me, like it's like I don't really feel like I have a culture because like I've moved around so much. I'm like, what am I? And it's like, okay, so like this is an interesting thing about race. So like, did you know that women, like this is proof statistically, are more likely to date people in their own race?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's like, it makes sense because like the way it was explained to me was, let's say like when you're mating, women can only have like, I mean, they can have like only a certain amount of babies, but they want to optimize the babies they have. Whereas like men can have like pretty much as many as they want.
Got it.
So it's like with women, they're more selective about their partners. It's kind of why, like, have you ever heard of the, like, I don't know what it's called, but there's like this principle that's like the top 20% of men get 80% of women.
Yeah.
And like the top 20% of that 20% get 80% of that 80%. And it just keeps going to like infinity. Like, I mean, not infinity, but like to like a really hard number. And it's like with women, like they get to be more like selective and shit like that, where it's like, I don't know, like it's like kind of like when I talk to like my friends who are women, like I'd say 99% of them have been like, oh yeah, like I've like kissed a guy, I've done shit, I've had a boyfriend. But like the times my friends with men, they're like, yeah, I haven't been hugged by someone in like 3 to 4 years.
It's kind of flipping now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like men are always going to be more horny than women are.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Like
I think that's biological.
Yeah, it's like you can look at it like with the economically, like there's scarcity. Like men desire women more than women desire men. And
also, I mean, just the idea of like evolutionarily, it's a lot of effort for your egg. Like it's for a woman. I'm like, think of evolution. For a woman to go and choose a mate, that is a 9-month dedication. Basically, 9 months to have the baby in your stomach and then. And it's the rest of your life with a child, right?
It's also kind of like, completely.
But for men, they can just, impregnate and then move on to the next.
In a span of like a week, you could get like pretty much as many people as like you can have sex with pregnant.
Yeah.
Whereas like a woman, like let's say she gets pregnant in a week, that's it. Like,
that's it, yeah.
That's about it, yeah.
So I guess that's the only way that makes sense about men are more likely to date outside of their own race, would have to assume that 80-20 rule, like you said, because it's not just that for every man that dates outside of his race, there has to be a woman that dates outside of her race.
Yeah.
That would be the confusion, but that's not necessarily true.
It's also kind of like, I don't know, one way to think about it is, let's say so there's this book I'm reading. It's called Dataclysm. So it's by like the guy who founded OkCupid, one of the world's first like dating websites. And he was a data scientist. He did his degree in Harvard. And he talked about what he like learned about human behavior. And he kind of showed that like through the data he found, he showed that like women tend to prefer their own race and like white men.
Got it.
And it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's really like interesting to me. Like for me, like my girlfriend is like, she's not Indian. And like, I kind of like, sometimes I wonder, it's like with all the girls like I've had things with who like, it's gone forward and like, I've been like, oh, like this is actually a person I can see myself with versus like, like this thing's like, I'm just trying to waste some time.
Right.
Like I've kind of noticed like, it usually comes to like cultural similarities and like, the ones I really like and like me around like a same amount, I'd say like we tend to be like the same race, if not like relatively similar races.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I think like the more society progresses, like that barrier will like keep going down and down. Because like comparatively, like we're a lot less racist now than we were like like in the 50s.
100%.
And it's like the more society goes, like you see more like mixed race people. Like there's a statistic like by 2025 or 2026, like a fourth of America will be Hispanic.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's really interesting because it's like, I really wonder like when will we get to a point where like race isn't like a big deal? Because like everybody has racist tendencies.
Yeah.
And people that like don't acknowledge that are the most racist of everybody.
That's
like, it's like,
an interesting point. I mean, I am one to think that racism is I think it's ingrained in human nature because it's present 100%. In every culture.
honestly, like, okay, this is something like I can say. And it's like, I have like certain like friends and people I know that have been like, oh, I'll never date an Indian woman, no matter what. And like, I see that rubbing off on like brown dudes. And I'm just kind of like, holy fuck, like that is the extent of like racism. Like for me, like, so like since I grew up on like in an international environment, like when I first came to uni, like I didn't find like Asian women attractive. But then like as time went on, I'm like, wait, like they're smart, they're cool, like fuck yeah, like yeah, Asian women, like they're the best. And it's like I kind of noticed like my tendencies were like getting less and less racist. And it's like, okay, white women are like, we are not racist at all, but like all their friends are literally carbon copies of them. It's like, yeah, it's like, again, it's with brown women too. And it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's weird with me where it's like, I've always grown up in this like super diverse like environment that like my roommate at times, he's kind of had to like explain how racism is and like things like that. Cause I'm like, wait, people really think that way?
But like, about dating, like if you have, let's say there's your personal preference, like your sexual preference is, I am less attracted to this particular race. Is that racist or is that just preference at that point?
Okay, that's a great question. So, that is an incredible question. I think it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B. Because like, okay, I guess I don't know. For me, it's like, I've always grown up in a diverse environment. And like, if I'm being brutally honest, like I had a preference for like white women. Like over other things. But like the more and more like I spent like, okay, this isn't diss to all white women, but like the more and more time I spent like with them and like talking to them, I just kind of realized like there's just certain cultural aspects. And okay, who knows? Maybe this is just me being fucking like autistic, but it's like there's certain like differences that like I don't think are like kind of like fixable. Where it's like what I really like, how I like dress is like I wear very like hype beast clothes and things like that. Whereas like I feel like white women on average, they prefer like, oh, he goes vintage shopping. Oh my god, he's a film major. Whereas like with like Asian women, it's more like, even myself, it's like, oh, like this guy, like he's got his shit together. Like he wants to do this. Like, oh, he's really passionate about that. And okay, like part of the things, and this is
white women, comment if you want film majors.
Yes, for real. Okay, like part of the thing, like I love my girlfriend so much because she's so career driven, and like one of the best qualities I saw in my mom, like I really respect, is like she gave my dad like space to like focus on his career. Like she was never like, oh, you don't spend enough time with us. Like she was like, I understand you like this, and I respect it. And like I really think that's like W mom thing to do. Like just like give him like the space to like follow his like career dreams. And like what I really love about my girlfriend is like I feel like I can see that in her. Like she's so like, dude, like she's so fucking smart. Like oh my god, like I feel like she makes me like a better person.
That's the dream.
And no, honestly, it's like, dude, like she's cracked. Like she's like a third year. She's done her like CFA exam. Most people don't like finish it until like their fourth year, and like they fail their first attempt. Unreal. She did it like as a fucking like second. She's got an internship with like Citibank.
There you go.
And like honestly, this is something I've noticed in myself. Like who you are depends on your friends.
Yeah, I mean, you're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with.
That is like, because like in first year, like I used to hang out with people who were like, they were cool, they were funny, but like they weren't career serious. They were like, they were this. And then in second year, like I hung out with people who were only career focused and only career serious. And like I kind of realized like there's no like right answer. Like you need a balance of both. Like you need, like for me, it's like my rule with my friends is I will be honest with you. I will tell you how I feel, and I will explain to you how I feel, because I feel like if I just enable you, like I'm a piece of shit friend.
For sure.
And it's like, bro, it's like, I see this with women like a lot. Like a lot of times they'll just enable bad behavior, and rather than just like, you know, like talking to them about it, being like, I don't like when you do this, they'd rather just like shit talk them behind their back.
About another friend?
About like, yeah, let's say there's Kathy, Susan, and like we're gonna call her Becca.
Okay.
So Kathy's like, she's a toxic relationship, and Susan is like, the behavior Kathy's showing is problematic. But rather than being like, hey, Kathy, I think you should change this. I think this is a problem. She'd rather just go to Becca and be like, Kathy's being such a fucking bitch right now. And I'm like, bro, it's like I don't know. It's like, again, I can't really hate because gossip is such an integral part of human society. There's this book, I haven't read it, but like I got the gist of it, called Sapiens.
Okay.
And like human information was communicated through gossip.
Yeah.
So in a sense, like, again, I feel like women more than men are they're more social than men.
In terms of gossip, I was actually talking about this the other day. Basically any time that I sit and eat and have lunch with a group of girls, the conversation tends to
Other people.
revolve around people.
Other people. Yep.
Whenever I'm sitting with dudes, we don't talk about people in general. Like we talk about sports, or we talk about the podcast, we talk about work, we talk about bullshit.
Yeah.
But with women, anytime I sit with them, it's always about other people.
But okay, here's my thing. It's interesting. Holy it is interesting. Like,
so you enjoy it?
Yes, bro. I fucking love this. Like, bro, tell me about how Gretchen cheated on her boyfriend. Really? Wow, that's fucking, yeah.
I like to consider myself a good judge of character. Like everyone likes to consider themselves a good judge of character. When it comes to trustworthiness, though, I would like to consider myself a very honest person, and I think that is one of the best ways to judge someone else's honesty, because you know how you behave and you know that you're an honest person. So when you see that trait of yourself in somebody else, you know you can trust them. Because I wouldn't know what an honest person looked like if I wasn't honest myself. The only reason I know how to judge if people are honest or not is to kind of compare them to me, because I know in my heart that I'm an honest person.
Okay, so I have a question for you. I'm flipping the script.
Yeah.
Do you have a checklist in your head for how you can tell if people are being honest or not?
It's not a checklist. It's
just a vibe?
Really intuitive, yeah.
Ooh. So for me, it's like I had this time where like I googled like, why do people lie? Like what forces people to lie? Because everybody lies. Like I've lied. Like you've definitely lied too.
Yeah.
And like what I've realized is like, even though I've lied, I currently I try my best not to, because all lying does is create walls. Right. It creates these walls between people where like, okay, I don't want to call it any of my friends, but like it creates this wall where like, okay, so there's this person and like he said he hooked up with this girl and like he didn't, and like should you be saying that? No. Yeah. But it's like I kind of get it. It's like, you know, like I get like wanting to be seen as like, oh, I'm this big man, like look at me, I'm so cool, like oh, I have all the, like I'm the best. But it's like when he kind of said that, I was like, oh damn, like that's crazy, like good for you. But it kind of like it made me unapproachable towards him, because like for me it's like I was like, oh shit, like that girl, like she's way too good for me, dog. Yeah. She's way too good for like most guys. Right. And like at the end, like I feel like if he kind of like just communicated his like vulnerabilities in the issue, where it's like, man, like I tried, but it didn't end up working out. I feel like I could have been like, hey bro, I've been there, dog. Yeah. Like he's literally me. Yeah. And it's like, again, it's like I just feel like lying in a sense is selfish, because like it just kind of like it kind of makes you like assume that I need this, like this person needs to see me as this way. And like that's why I need to create this character. And it's like it's selfish, because you're kind of not letting the person make their own judge based on your life experiences. For sure. Yeah. That's a good point. That is a good point. Okay, we'll do the next poll. Oh, let's go. Next poll. I want to ask you. There's a few. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but I want to find an interesting one for you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, honestly, dog, this was like such a fucking great break. It's been big, man. It's been awesome. A great. Like honestly, I had so much fun doing this. This is perfect. Best podcast at UofT. Respect. Yeah, bro. It's like honestly, it's like I wish like honestly like if you got, I feel like you guys like you need to figure out some way to get UofT like Vic to be like, hey, are you interested in doing this, and like get like expand your outreach, because like you guys are doing a great job. Like you've got 1K on Instagram for like what, this podcast is only like what, 30 episodes? Yeah. And it's like, dude, like that's insane. That means like every episode you got around like it's about 30 per episode, which is like shit, bro. Like respect. It's awesome. But it's like, again, it's like I just like, who knows, bro? Like maybe like one day like, we're all gonna graduate. Like I feel like your legacy at UofT could be like, how does this podcast live through me? That could be awesome. But it's like every 4 years you're like you are the new podcast host. Yeah. That's interesting. I've thought about that, whether I should kind of keep it and kind of rebrand once I graduate, or to leave it here and kind of find a new host in first year. But we'll see what happens. We got good question here for you. I asked, which students are the smartest? We have 3 countries and an other option. Okay. And the total number of votes for this one was... Wait, tell me the options. Okay. I'm gonna guess. China, India, Canadian, other. Correct. Ooh, correct. So there you go. China, Canadian, Indian, other. So, and it was 116. Okay, wait, I'm gonna guess what it was. Okay. China first, India second, other third, Canada fourth. So we have China first. Mm-hmm. Second was other. Really? Second was other. Third was Canada. India was fourth? Fourth was India. It was a close call between everything but China. Can I see it? That is... Oof. Okay, that's interesting.
So just to read it out here, this is an old poll. 34% China, 23% other, 22% Canada, 21% India. What do you make of that? Because you grew up in all sorts of places. I kind of want to ask you about how all that happened. Why did you move around so much?
So my dad works for this like hotel chain called the Kempinski.
Okay.
Honestly, my dad has the most inspirational fucking story. So dude was like, dude was in university and he was just being fucking stupid. And like he used to run track, but he was never good.
Yeah.
And like he ended up getting kicked out of university. But like to his like luck, there was like, so you know the IIT schools?
No.
One of the most competitive and hard to get into schools in the world, like in India. Like there's interviews of like Indian kids being like, oh no, if I don't get into IIT, I have to go to my safety, Harvard. Oh no, God, please, I don't want to go to Harvard.
Yeah.
And like all my family's gonna think less of me.
Yeah.
And it's like my dad got to go to like the management equivalent of that. Not even because he did well in the entrance exam, but because he was in this like running thing, and like he got to go, and like he was a chef. That was what his job was.
Yeah.
But like he, through the power of networking and just being a charming man, he talked to his bosses, and like he got promoted. Where like he started as a chef, and currently he is the area manager of Asia.
Jeez.
So he was the area manager of like Kenya, and like he is
for what? For the hotel.
The hotels, like all the hotels. So he moved from like chef to head of F&B, like general manager, managing all the hotels, and like. He's like, dude, like he is like so smart and cracked. Like, you know, during COVID, his hotel made a profit.
Yeah.
Which is like,
that's
right?
crazy.
How? Like, even I ask him, he's like, I don't know. Like,
Asia is a big area to manage.
It was in Africa.
Oh, in Africa.
And it's like, he's honestly taught me where it's like, okay, like some people have bad GPAs. And like, I'm not going to cap. My GPA is not great. But it's like, I want this, what that story serves to me is like inspiration for like, you can always turn your life around. And like honestly, like networking is the most like incredible thing. Like if you're a university student, take the opportunities. Go to the networking events. Talk to people. Like literally just ask questions. Like do that. Like bro, like nothing will give you a greater reward than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, again, it's like I feel like people have this like box in their head, like this is what success looks like for me. This is what a person who's gonna be successful looks like. And like I think my dad serves as a like, it's not black and white, dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
what about you, Carter? Tell me about your parents.
My parents are great.
Yeah.
My parents are awesome. So my mom works for a home building company.
Sick.
And my dad works for a car building company. So
sick.
We got houses and cars. My dad works for Honda plant, and my mom works for Devonley Homes, which builds houses.
So like for me, it's like I have these like implicit things I just know about hotels because like my dad worked for it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything for house building and home building?
You know what? It's
house building, car building.
Like, I mean, yeah, I could give like little kind of tidbits, but I actually don't know too much. Actually, it's a good point.
But no, you know what's crazy? Even though you think you don't know that much, like I'd argue like you probably have things that are just so engraved into your brain.
Good
that you're
point.
So you see somebody make a decision, you're like, why would you choose? Why are you choosing plywood for like XYZ reasons? Yeah. It's like. It's insane. Like, there's a lot of things we know, but we're not really like conscious that we know about.
It makes me like, yeah, maybe it feels to me like everyone knows this, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So the reason that you moved around to so many places was because of this hotel job.
Yeah, he kept getting promoted.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the Boundary News.
Oh, Boundary News. So truth be told, I haven't gone to that many meetings of Boundary, but like it's so funny.
For people who don't know what it is.
So Boundary News is like the satire UofT like paper, and like they just kind of like try to make fun of like UofT, and like it's so funny. Like they're such funny guys. It's like one thing I pitched, it never got like done, was like comp sci student joins cheer team to like feel touch of woman.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd be allowed doing that.
No, but it's like I don't know. It's like. There was like, it's so funny. It's like, it's such a great process to just like sit with like really funny people. And just like, I do it on Fridays. Like, okay, sometimes I skip class to go to it.
Right.
It's like, I go there and like, I just like sit and I just laugh my ass off.
So like you said that you pitched that. That actually sounds really funny to me. Is there a line with them? Like, have you felt like there's certain things they don't want to say because it's
honestly,
offensive?
If I'm being real, I haven't pitched it. I just thought about it, but I just never said it.
Okay.
So like, let's see. Like, does that go on Boundary?
What do you think about like this thing where people are taking offense to comedy nowadays. Like a lot of things
the
are
Matt Rife
interpreted the
scandal?
wrong day.
So it's like, okay,
The wrong way, sorry.
I'm gonna be real, like the special needs helmet thing was so funny.
Yeah.
That shit was so funny.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like I don't find Matt Rife that funny, but that special needs thing. But it's like,
Wait, what do you say? What do you say?
so like Matt Rife was getting canceled for being out of pockets, and he was like, guys, I need to post an apology, and he sent a link, and it was just like, it was a link to special needs helmet. And it's like, okay, the thing is like, honestly, that shit was funnier than his whole comedy special.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, I feel like there is a line between like being offensive and being funny. And I think the best comedian is the one who knows how to walk that line.
Right.
Where it's like, honestly, with me, it's like, sometimes I struggle if I don't really know a person. Like, how can I just be funny based on the things they said? Like,
That's the thing. Everyone's line is different.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, again, it's like, like my goal, like when I make people laugh, and honestly, I kind of had a toxic relationship with it at a point where it was like, I perceived my value, like as one point, like, could I make people laugh? Do I make them laugh? Like, am I funny? Like, the next thing I say isn't funnier than the last thing I said, I'm a failure. Like,
Right.
Like, what's the point in like even living and
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And then like one day I literally was just like, okay, like, why am I thinking this?
Yeah.
And like, I Google like, how do you fix this? And they're just like, you're taking your life too seriously. And that's, honestly, that's the beauty
Google
of comedy.
told you that?
Yeah. Like,
Nice.
you're taking your life too seriously. And I'm like, honestly, that's the beauty of comedy, where it's like, like, bro, like, okay, so what? You said a bad joke. Like, it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
it happens. Just like, I don't know, like, people are always like, don't try to be funny. And like, I don't know, maybe people didn't perceive me as funny during this podcast, but it's like, I feel like it's a skill. It's a skill you build by like consistently trying. And like, the person who ends up being the funniest is the person who's the most comfortable with, I can put myself in this uncomfortable situation.
True.
And I can learn things from it. Where it's like, yeah, when I used to really bother me when people didn't like laugh at my jokes, but now it's like, I had this time when I said something and like, it like nobody really laughed, but then this other person said something that built off it and everybody laughed. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I take satisfaction in knowing that like, without my comment, we wouldn't have gotten to that place.
For sure. U of T is a very academic school.
Yeah.
What do you think about party life at this university?
It's okay, honestly, I feel like when people complain, they're kind of bitching.
Okay.
Like, dude, we're in downtown Toronto. Like, there's so many clubs. Like, there's so much if you're willing to, like, look for it. It's like, again, like, maybe my perspective. Okay, actually, no. I've partied in London. I've partied here. I've partied, like, in Africa. I'm going to party in Thailand probably this summer. And it's like, okay, so one time I was at Six Flags in New Jersey. And I was just alone. And I was just going on rides. Like, my family was there, but they didn't want to go. And, like, I was, like, bored out of my mind standing in there. And, like, the thing is, like, I remember, like, a summer ago, I was in this, like, theme park in France with my friends. And, like, even waiting in lines was the best fucking time.
Yeah.
And it's, like, again, it's, like, I feel like it's not an issue of party life. I think it's just an issue of people don't really find the people that they feel comfortable that they can hang out with and do certain things like that.
Got it.
Because it's, like, dude, like, again, maybe it's a social issue more than a party thing, but, like, if you want to go partying, like, on a Monday, like, Lost and Found is open. Like, the only, like, limit to how much you party is, do you want to party?
Right.
And, like, do you have people that you feel comfortable? And, like, I think, like, you know, like, honestly, like, for me, it was, like, first year, I felt like I had, like, almost too many friends. Like, I knew kind of too many people. I didn't really have a deep relationship. But then second year, I kind of felt like, oh, no, I have only, like, really close friends. And I don't really have, like, B-tier friends.
B-tier, yeah.
No. Okay, so me and my girlfriend talk about this all the time. So it's like, there's 3 rankings to friends. There's like your A-tier, your B-tier, your C-tier. A-tier are your boys. Like the people who you die for.
For life.
Yeah, if you see them, you know how to make them laugh. You fuck with them, like they fuck with you. You hang out one-on-one. Your B-tier are like the people you invite to your birthday. The people that you're close with, you hang out with in like a large group, but like it's not necessarily something where you like would hang out one-on-one. And your C-tier are like, oh, I'm just walking around in the library. I see this person. Let me just speak to him for a little bit.
Yeah.
So like me and my girlfriend were like talking about this, and like I feel like I have my A tier, which a lot of people don't, which makes me feel sad. But like I feel like I have a very big C tier. Like I know a lot of people who I just see and like I'd be like, oh hey, how are you doing? And like we chat. But like sometimes like I feel like I struggle to make B tier friends. Like people who like you'd hang out in a group situation. And that's not to say I don't have it, but like I'd say that's more difficult for me than A and C tier. But my girlfriend, like, she's like, oh, most of my friends are like B tier friends. Yeah. And that kind of makes me wonder, like, is this a difference just between me and my girlfriend? Or is that like a human thing? Like with you, what would you say? Like, how would you say your friends are divided in the A, B, and C tier?
It's a very interesting question. I've never thought of it in terms of tiers like that.
Yeah.
So like before you just brought that up, I would have really only used the term friends for A tier people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people who I'm actually close with. If I'm not close with you, I feel like maybe I'm putting too much importance on the term friend. But yeah, like I have a few guys, single digit number, who I would consider like close friends, I guess A tier if you want to call them that.
So statistically, okay, what they say in stats is most people have 3 to 4 close friends.
Okay.
So it's like, that's like, I guess that's like you could use that as a frame for like, how much do I compare to the other in terms
Got
of
it.
A tier.
What do you think about the idea that if you have a guy that has a lot of friends, probably has none at all?
Ooh, there's a quote where it's like, those who are friends to all are friends to none.
Yes.
Well, it's like, again, like, okay, so part of the book I was reading, they say that, like, you know, people who are more themselves, you know, like, okay, everyone, provided you're not like a sex offender,
okay.
you're generally liked around the same amount. But just people who are more themselves, have more people who love them, but an equal amount of people who hate them. So they're like around that neutral level. Whereas people who are like agreeable, go with the crowd, don't really like to like differ, they're more centered towards like the middle amount. So it's kind of like, again, I don't have all this data.
So I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you're saying like in terms of comparing you and your girlfriend, if you can confidently say you have some good close friends with you, there's a higher chance that you have people who really dislike and hate you.
Like I got people who dislike me.
Right, but then if you want to avoid having people dislike you, it also is going to come at the price of not having people who are too close with you either.
Yeah, it's like it's the like, and like it's like, again, it's like, it's very interesting because like it's all human nature, and like I think like, I don't know, it's like, for me it's like, I know there's this issue where guys are like, I don't know if I am my best friend's best friend. And I've personally never gone through that. Like I've always known like, you are my best friend. We are best friends. Like,
who's your best friend?
Michael Rattray.
Shout out to Michael.
Shout out to Michael. I love you. Stop being a pussy. Not in a derogatory way. Just like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like, Michael's like, he's like my best friend. And it's like, we just get each other very well. And like, I know like, he died for me, I die for him. Yeah. Like, it's like that. It's like, I always joke with my girlfriend. I'm like, you're my best friend except for Michael.
Yeah. True.
And it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. Like, there's just that, like, again, it's like, honestly, do you really need more than 3 close friends?
No, I don't think you do. I'm trying to think of how many do I have? How many guys in my life would I die for? Is that, do you think, what the metric is for a close friend?
Okay, I think that's best friend. A tier friend is people you hang out on one-on-one. Not on the podcast format, but just like with no like initiative, no incentive. Just like, I like your company and I'm okay with hanging out with you one-on-one.
Yeah. That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I can think of 5, 6.
Ooh, that's more than average.
5, 6, yeah, but it's not a group.
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
like
not
individuals?
So it's not like it's a group of 6 of us.
Is the camera still going? Because we've been going on for 30 minutes. I'm down to keep talking though.
No. It's good. It's cool.
Awesome.
It's
Six.
cool. Yeah. So no, like realistically, I think the only person I die for who is genuinely my best friend is my brother Troy.
Oh, I don't have siblings, so like I don't even know what it feels like.
I think that that's the only person. So, like, yeah, he's absolutely my best friend, and I think that sharing blood actually ensures that connection is guaranteed and for life. Yeah. I'm not saying that you can't have that. Once again, you and your boys seem really close, but this seems like no matter what happens with you and your sibling, it's an unbreakable bond.
It's like, I don't know, like the saying I like to think is like, I think your family is the most important group of people ever, but not all families related by blood. That's
good.
That's how I like to think.
That's true.
It's like, when it comes, like, I don't mean this in like a sad way, but it's like, I don't think I'll ever fundamentally understand what it means to love someone like a brother. Because like, I don't have a brother. I don't have a sister. Right. So it's like I understand what it means to like love somebody, but I don't know, how does that specific relationship differ from what I feel?
Right.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, if I were someone who didn't have a sibling, that's an interesting question. How do you think the insults affect people differently when it's something they can control versus something they can't? Because you could argue both sides. Like, if it's something I can't control, why would I get offended? But then also, it's something I can't control. Why the f*** would you make fun of me for that? You know what I mean?
Okay, here's my question. Do you think mental illness is something that people can and cannot control?
If my definition of mental illness,
Yeah.
I think is something that you cannot control.
You can. Okay, so like I am diagnosed with like generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay.
And like, you know, it's just it is what it is. Like there's not much to it. Like I feel like the whole point of counseling and all that is how do you teach yourself to control this? Like Pete Davidson had this sketch where he was like, I'm always going to be depressed. Nothing's going to change that. But it's like with him, it's like, but I learned strategies. Like how do I wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I don't want to do anything? And like for me, it's like I feel like there will be tendencies. Like I'm an overthinker. Like I will like think something to death, and like I'll fixate on it and I'll just like think about it, keep running through simulations and all that. But like I feel like for me, it's like I've learned all these strategies where it's like, hey, what are you thinking about? Like how relevant is that to what you're doing right now? And like I don't know, like for me, it's like part of how I deal with like my life and like issues is like I make jokes about it. Because like it's easier to like laugh at something than it is to be like, damn, that sucks.
I mean, that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes that comes across as insensitive, especially when I'm talking to other people with like mental illness. Because I'll be like, I'll just like, because like let's say like somebody like talks about something, and I'll be like, ha, been there, done that. Yeah. And like after like I do that, like sometimes like they get hurt by it, but it's also like I don't know how to respond. Like this is how I deal with my issues and like so forth.
That's a good point. Yeah. Once again, it comes back to that point where we were saying when it comes to comedy, everyone's line is different. Yeah. Someone might appreciate a comment like that because it uplifts the mood, but someone might be like, that was insensitive. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think for me, I've always said this to all my friends. Yeah. If I die in a ridiculous manner, make fun of me for it. When I'm dead, if I'm crossing the street and I didn't look both ways, I got hit by a bus, make bus jokes for the rest of your lives. Because I want to impact as positively as I can, even past my grave. If that means my friends get to laugh at my expense, fine.
So like I've told my friends, if let's say I die like before I'm 25, or like in like a stupid, I had this one point I wanted to buy a grappling hook so I could like climb buildings, and like it was a joke to be a vigilante. Like I mean, I was low-key kind of serious, but not really serious about it. But then I've literally always said, like, imagine I died doing this. Like my friends at my funeral would be like, yeah, he died the way he like lived, doing what he loved, being stupid, climbing buildings.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. It's interesting, like these relationships in terms of, like what's the line? Because like recently Matthew Perry died, and the Matthew Perry memes were instant. I saw there was a bunch of jokes being made. Yeah. I don't know. Is that funny? Is that not funny? Like, it depends who you are. Like, it might be able to uplift someone's spirit. It might be able to make someone feel worse.
So, like, okay, how I think about it, and this, I think most comedians, most professional comedians, like, they have a mental illness. Like, creativity and mental illness is very correlated.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, so here's an interesting stat I read. What major do you think has the most rates of depression and anxiety?
Great question. What major? Mm-hmm. Is it engineering?
No.
Is it psychology?
No.
What is it?
It's arts. People who are doing creative things.
Interesting.
Because mental illness and creativity are really tied together. It's like I don't know, like you know Van Gogh?
Yeah.
So a lot.
Not personally, but yeah.
Yeah. So like, you know how he cut his ear off?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he cut his ear off.
Okay.
Like, oh, there's this thing. It's insane. So this is something that's really cool. So in physics, there's this thing about like fluid dynamics. Like there's this like math question that if you solve, you get $1 million. It's called the Navier-Stokes, and like it's about like how do fluids move? How do they do that? So Van Gogh, I don't know if it's Van Gogh. I think it might have been. But like one artist, when they were in like a bipolar manic state, they drew this image, and like people were like recently, they're like, the way he drew those arrows, that's how fluids move. He in this manic state just drew this thing that coincided with this is how it works and this is how it moves. And it's like the correlation between like art and like mental illness is like, it's kind of apparent when you think about it. Because like if let's say you're willing to be an artist, you're putting in the risk of like, I'm going to do this degree for 4 years. And you subconsciously have made a decision of, I don't care like whether I don't make as much as like, you know, people who do something safer, like, you know, business, like one of the safer degrees. Yeah. You make the decision of like, I don't care what my life is. I choose to do this because I don't want to, like, because I want to do this. And like, in a sense, it's statistically, it's not smart to be an artist, but it has the greatest payoff. Where it's like think about like, okay, like me and my like roommate were talking about this, and it's like, do you think drama teachers regret their lives?
I don't know.
My argument for it is I had this one drama teacher and he was such a fucking dick. He was such a dick to everybody. Okay, like, honestly, I was kind of a piece of shit too. Like one time, like, okay, like I'm a piece of shit and I can acknowledge this. When I was like in the 9th grade, he had a watch and I didn't really know much about watches.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that a Rolex? And he was like, no, it's not. And I was like, now I'm looking back at it. I was like, why are you asking your like high school teacher if he had enough money to buy a Rolex?
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, bro, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And it's like, honestly, I kind of get why he was a dick because like I didn't know I was like being mean. I was just like, oh, like, is this thing I saw?
Yeah.
Like, I understand how that would trigger some like insecurities in him where he's like, well, like, am I like, I'm not good enough to do it. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, I would not want to be a drama teacher myself.
Same. Ooh, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think smart people are more or less likely to be mentally ill?
Smart as in academic?
Intelligent people who can think very well,
Mm.
do well in school. Sorry, do well in school. Do you think they are more or less likely to be mentally ill? And I know the answer for
I'm going to say more likely.
More?
Yeah.
That was a common belief, but pretty recently, 2021, published in 2022, the NHIS.org did this study in the UK where they did a huge amount of data where they looked at like general intelligence, like people, and they found that smart people are actually less likely to be mentally ill.
That's strange.
Yeah, no.
My reason for saying that I thought that they were more likely is because, and actually I meant to ask you this at the start because you're talking about truth at the beginning of the podcast and all this stuff about how you're interested in stats and how stats can lead to truth. I think that a lot of intelligent people seek scientific truth as like the best way to conduct themselves and live their lives and exist in society. I don't know if that's necessarily the most beneficial way. I have a saying that I kind of have begun living by for the past few months, which is what's useful is more important than what's true. So when it comes to mental illness, when it comes to depression, when it comes to a lot of these things, the science behind it, people will kind of trap themselves into a belief system that cripples their action in life. So I don't want to believe, I don't want to believe in something, even if it's true, that is going to make me less powerful of a person.
So there's this thing, it's like, you know, like with free will, people say it's better to, your life quality improves if you believe you have free will.
Right.
Like you just more like think, and like, at least how I see it is, so, you know, like autistic people gravitate towards math because it's a game that has rules and patterns that life doesn't.
Right.
Like it's easier to teach AI how to solve problems and do proofs than it is to teach it how to drive a car.
Right.
And it's like, because those elements of nuance, like, I think a lot of like people gravitate towards math and science because it just makes sense to them. But also there's a huge interlap between the world and math. So do you know what graph theory is?
No.
Okay, so there was this mathematician, Euler, and there was this riddle. There were these 7 bridges in Vienna, and they asked a question. There are 4 cities. Can you go to each city by crossing each bridge once? And Euler was this mathematician, and mathematicians didn't really know how to do it, but Euler answered the question, and the answer is no. And in answering it, he created this field called graph theory, where like he analyzed it like as a graph and saw like how do the outcomes go and do this. But the crazy thing is, you know, modern people, dating apps, they use graph theory to say how strong a person's relationships are. It's this thing called network analysis.
Network analysis.
Yeah, it's like I learned about this from the book I was reading, but the interesting thing is, like, have you ever noticed how people who date within their friend groups, the relationship never tends to work out?
Interesting.
It's like, think about it.
I haven't really, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head.
It feels right?
Right.
But the reason is this. Let's say you and your girlfriend share the same friend group, and like you have your like group of people that you're a lot closer, and your girlfriend has her group of people that they're a lot closer. But since you're in the same friend group, there comes this thing where your girlfriend, like every relationship, everybody has opinions. Like your girlfriend's friends are going to be thinking this, and your friends are going to be thinking this, and a lot of that discourse gets shared. A lot of that discourse gets shared, and because that discourse is shared, it kind of like it weakens the relationship because like it kind of like it takes away the perception of me and you are in a relationship versus everybody, and that plays like a role into it. It's like what they say is like the most strong relationships, and keep in mind this isn't like an end-all be-all, but they say it's preferable if you and your partner are the sole connectors of your social groups.
Interesting.
And like the older you get, like it kind of melds together.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing about that is you've developed your own identity. And like when you're like, again, like I'm not going to go up to somebody and be like, "Huh, your partner, it's pretty weird that they do that." Yeah. Oh, also, this is another fact. What do you think are the 2 questions that indicate how likely a relationship is to be successful and how compatible 2 people are?
2 questions.
There's 2 questions, according to Dataclysm.
Yeah. Oh, good question. I don't know. I'm not even going to try to guess.
You're not even going to try to guess? It is, do you like horror movies? And have you ever traveled alone? Those are 2 really good indications for how, like, if a relationship will be successful past a certain stage.
How come?
Because, okay, so I don't know why. That's just what the data said. But I asked my girlfriend this, and like we both said we've traveled alone, and we're both kind of like, she doesn't like horror movies, but I'm horror movie neutral. Like, I'll never be like, "Hey guys, let's watch a horror movie." But if like we're watching it, like I'll watch it.
Yeah.
But my main take is like with the traveling thing is like traveling is such a big part of my life. And I think being able to travel alone kind of indicates that like you're willing to like take a risk. Like, you know, go to this place and like meet these people and like just kind of do it alone. And I think it just kind of has like values that are similar. And like with horror movies, I guess it just kind of like, what do you like to do when you relax? And if you like horror movies, that's putting yourself into like a high stress environment, you know?
Got it.
So like I'm kind of bullshitting on this one.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, but that's like my analysis. And like it's interesting is like me and my girlfriend had pretty similar answers to that. Do you like
I would not watch a horror movie by myself. That seems like some psychotic shit.
Yeah.
Travel alone? Never done it, no.
So, okay, anybody in the podcast, if you're interested in him, like, just see if you answer those questions and, like, hit him up.
All right, yeah. I don't know if my girlfriend would be too happy.
Okay, your girlfriend?
Yeah.
What do you think about your answers to the question?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, my bad.
No worries. Oh, man. This has been a good conversation, man.
I've really enjoyed it.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing final remarks for the people?
So there's this cognitive bias that is when you judge people's actions, you're more likely to view it as black and white rather than when you judge your own actions, you're more likely to look at it as like nuanced. For example, let's say I steal something from your house. You're more likely to think he stole this because he is a bad person rather than what if he stole it because he needs to survive. And I think one of the biggest revelations I've had is I think it's a good practice to like when people make decisions and you're about to like hate on them. I think it's a good thing to just ask yourself, why did they make that decision? And like, you won't come to an answer because like, who knows? Like, I don't know what's going on in your head, but I think that just makes people more kind. And like, honestly, like, this is so cringe to say, but like, I think people need to be more kind to one another and just, like intelligence is like, it's something that honestly, I think is predetermined. Like you can learn more and you can make smarter, but like, you can't control it past a certain point. Like I'm never going to be like a 145 IQ kind of person, but it's like, the thing you can't control is like, be nice to other people. Yeah, and that's like fucking cringe as fuck. But like,
that's a very positive message.
Yeah.
Appreciate that big time. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Arnav, VoV podcast.
Yeah, follow my Instagram, Arnav_N. Follow my poll account. Add me on LinkedIn if you've got like good connections. Fucking like, what else? Stream my boy SoundCloud. Not my SoundCloud. So, take care, man.
Some tags.
Do you want to dap up to like end it off?
Oh, for sure. Let's do
it.
Absolutely.
Sick.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's VoV podcast. Follow the Instagram and TikTok at Voices of Vic. Subscribe to the channel. Podcast every Sunday, as Arnav said before. Number 1 podcast at UofT.
Number one podcast in Toronto.
Number 1 podcast in the whole city.
Second podcast to Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2 to Joe Rogan.
Exactly.
I don't even watch Joe Rogan.
He's the GOAT. Anyways, peace out, everybody.